Now, with that percentage of the 1RM, particular load and repetition assignments are indicated for athletes trained. We just talked about that, so let's go ahead and skip on. We need to have some variation within the training days. So there's going to be heavy days and there's going to be light days. And heavy days are loads that are designed to be full repetition maximums, the greatest resistance that can be successfully lifted for that goal number of reps. So if I'm doing a 6RM that day, I'm going as much weight as I can for 6RM for that heavy day. The loads for the other training days are reduced to provide recovery after the heavy day while still maintaining sufficient training frequency and volume to enhance your goals. Now, one of the things that I've done is I've found good luck with I believe it was called like the empirical rule of 60%. I think I might have gotten that from Thomas Kerr's The Science of Sports Training. And essentially what it said was your overall workload should be 60% on your recovery day, on your lighter day, of what your heavy day was. You're still maintaining sufficient training frequency and volume, but you're not going as hard on those days. Now, progression of the timing of the load. As the athlete adapts to the training stimulus, loads must be increased so that improvements will occur over time. So that's just it's progressive overload. If you're only going to adapt to what the stimulus that you place upon the body. So if the only thing that you ever do is 300 pounds for 3 repetitions, you're only going to be able to do 300 pounds for 3 repetitions. So you need to monitor each athlete's training and response, and that's going to help the strength conditioning professional know when and to what extent the load should be increased. Now, along those lines, there's a conservative method that can be used for increasing an athlete's training load. And this is the 2 for 2 rule. So if the athlete can do 2 or more repetitions over the goal for 2 sessions in a row, go ahead and increase the load. That's just super simple. It slow cooks the athlete. It's 2 sessions in a row, so it wasn't a fluke, and it was 2 repetitions, so you're seeing a significant improvement. So you want to make sure that you're looking at that, and that's a conservative way of doing things. Now, a more aggressive way of doing it is utilizing something similar to the APRE, the Autoregulatory Progressive Resistance Exercise Progression. Now, this is derived from Captain Thomas DeLorme, who is where the 3 sets of 10 comes from. But whenever you get down to it, you're doing typically 2+ working sets, and the first work set dictates the load of the subsequent work set. And then if you do, let's say you're doing 4 work sets, the first work set dictates the second work set. Second performance of the second work set dictates the load for the third. The performance of the third dictates the load for the fourth. And then that final work set for whatever number of sets you're doing dictates the starting load for the subsequent week. The APRE has got 3 typical routines, a 10RM, a 6RM, and a 3RM, which is the 10RM is hypertrophy, 6RM is strength and hypertrophy, and the 3RM is strength and could be power depending on the exercise that you select. You see that we have adjustment charts down below. So you know if you do a set number of repetitions, you move up X weight. So if you just examine those, this is the basic routine that has been listed before. And these are just the adjustment charts that go along with it. If you want more information on that, I've written several articles and on that, and I believe I've given talks that might be up on YouTube on the topic as well. Also, my dissertation can be found online. Just search Brian Mann, dissertation, APRE, something like that, and it'll come up, as well as the journal articles, which should be open source, I believe. Now, why I go over this is just it's more aggressive. It's not 2 for 2. It is, hey, how did I do today? And how I do today dictates, on this set, dictates the next set, dictates the next set, dictates the subsequent session. Now, we do need to talk about progression of the training load. And we're looking at some general recommendations. Now, there's going to be some variations, of course. Training status, volume loads, exercise greatly influence appropriate load increases. If it's a highly technical exercise, going up 10 pounds might completely change the technique. But going up 2.5 or 5 might be sufficient. So a lot of times relative load increases, 2.5 to 10%, can be used in place of the absolute values in the subsequent table. So we see upper body and lower body for smaller, weaker, less trained, and larger, stronger, more trained individuals. And we see how it varies. And one of the things that I have found, especially with these smaller, weaker individuals, is that a lot of times they're going to respond better to volume. And if they're weaker or a individual who is not wanted to lift weights before, they have some reservations to it, and they're being forced to because they're sport. I'll let them have a little bit of leeway, and I might say, hey, you can go up 2.5 pounds or stay the same. It's up to you. Then after a couple of sets of that or sessions, then I'll finally move the load on up, but I want to accumulate volume and not turn them off to lifting weights. So volume, what is volume? It's the total amount of weight lifted in a training session. Set is a group of repetitions. Repetition volume is simply the total number of repetitions performed during a workout session. And volume load is the sets times the reps times the weight. Now we need to talk about single set versus multiple set training. And we're going to talk about this in a couple of different regards. A single set is often, just one set. And this is going to be appropriate for untrained individuals or for during this first bit of time that you're returning to training. If you remember back to the chart, what was the training stress for a beginner? Well, they required low training stresses, and the single set training is a good way to do that. Whenever somebody is more highly trained, they typically need higher volumes to promote further gains in strength, especially for intermediate and advanced resistance trained athletes. Now, along those lines, though, on the single set, there's some training programs that call themselves single set, but they really aren't. What do I mean by that? Well, for instance, there's Dr. Michael Yessis came out with a program that would have multiple exercises for the muscle groups. So instead of doing 3 sets of 8 on a hamstring curl, maybe they do a set of 20 on leg curls, a set of 20 on glute ham raise, a set of 20 on back extension, a set of 20 on either Romanian deadlift, glute ham raise, so whatever one I didn't already bring up. And while it appears that they're only a single set program, well, really they've done 4 sets instead of 3 for the same muscle. So realize that there's a bit of leeway, and single set to failure is not always what you think it is. However, it is definite that the more trained you are, the more that you're going to have to push higher volumes and intensities to get further gains. We have progressive overload that it has to be followed. If you aren't progressively overloading, you're not going to be listening further results and adaptations. So the training status. It is appropriate for an athlete to perform only 1 or 2 sets as a beginner and to add sets as he or she becomes better trained. So just exactly what we were saying in a previous slide. Now, the primary resistance training goal is based off of, the volume is based off of the resistance training goal. If I'm looking at hypertrophy, I'm going to be having higher volumes. If I'm looking at power, I'm going to have lower volumes. So we can see here is the goal repetitions and the number of sets. So if I'm looking at strength, I'm going to be looking at less than or equal to 6 reps, 2 to 6 sets there. The power, again, this is based off of the weightlifting derivatives. I'm going to be looking at 1 to 2 reps per set, 3 to 5 sets for things like my throwers versus team sport athletes will typically be looking at 3 to 5 reps or 3 to 5 sets at the intensities that we looked at in a previous slide that looked just like this. Hypertrophy, we're typically looking at 6 to 12 repetitions and 3 to 6 sets of that. And then muscular endurance, greater than or equal to 12 reps, 2 to 3 sets of that. Now with volume, our primary resistance training goal for strength and power, our volume assignments for power trainer typically lower than those for strength because we need high quality. We need the nervous system to be able to send that signal down extremely fast. Hypertrophy, okay? The increases in muscular size are simply associated with higher training volumes and time under tension and performing 3 or more exercises per muscle group if hypertrophy is your main goal. Muscular endurance. They're going to be having many repetitions per set, lighter loads, and fewer sets. 12 repetitions or more, honestly, whenever I'm looking at endurance, I'm typically going 20, 25, 30 repetitions. So granted, those are more than 12, but 12, it could be hypertrophy right there. But it's light loads, many reps.